The first time my son's girlfriend called me the help in my own kitchen, I nearly dropped the porcelain mug, my late husband's favorite, right onto the tile. It was 6:12 a.m., my robe still half-tied, and there she was at my counter like she'd always lived here, scrolling on my tablet with sticky fingers. "Hi, my dears. Grace here." Imagine waking up to someone acting like your home is hers. If you were Evelyn, would you swallow it or push back? Tell me in the comments. I'm Evelyn Harper, 67, and this little Cape Cod house outside Cleveland has been mine for 32 years. 2 nights ago, my son, Mason, arrived with a suitcase and a woman on his arm. "Mom, this is Lila," he said. "Her lease ended early, just a couple weeks until we find a place." Lila smiled like a cashier who's already decided you're a problem. "Hi, Mrs. Harper. Mason says you have space." Space, not home, not please. I let them in anyway, because Mason looked worn down, and I still have the reflex of a mother. Patch the leak, ignore the flood. By the next morning, my refrigerator had new rules taped to it in round handwriting. No dairy, no sugar, no toxic oils. My butter sat in the trash under a coffee filter like it was contraband. When I asked about it, Lila said, "It's for our health," and Mason mumbled, "It's just temporary, Mom." Temporary has a way of becoming permanent when nobody fights it. The first night they stayed, I cooked anyway, habit and nerves. I put out a simple plate: roasted chicken, green beans, cornbread. Lila poked at it like it was a science project. "Do you have anything more clean? Like a shakshuka vibe?" she asked. And Mason laughed the way he does when he wants everyone to get along. After dinner, I found Lila in my hallway, sliding my family photos to the side so she could place a little chinoiserie trinket she'd unpacked from her bag. "It brightens the space," she said, and Tom's picture ended up crooked, half hidden behind her porcelain bird. I fixed the frame after she went upstairs, and I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at my husband's grin and feeling the old loneliness flare, then harden into resolve. When Lila's door clicked shut, I took my phone to the laundry room, the one place in this house that still smelled like my detergent and not her perfume. I texted Nadine, "If someone moves into your house and starts taking over, what do you do?" She replied in 10 seconds. "You document. Then you act." So there I was at 6:12 a.m., aching knees, craving nothing but tea and quiet, stepping into a kitchen that didn't look like mine anymore. My radio was gone. My wooden spoon crock was gone. In their place sat a glass cloche of lemons, like a showroom, and a skinny vase of dried beige stems. Even the dish soap had been swapped for something that smelled like eucalyptus and judgment. Lila didn't look up. "Morning," she said. "I'm making content." "I'm making tea," I answered, "and that's my tablet." She blinked at me slowly, eyes doing a quick inventory of my robe and slippers. "Mason said I could use it. Also, could you sanitize the counters today? Like actually disinfect. Some people don't know the difference." I felt my face go hot. "I clean my own counters, Lila." She waved a hand, still scrolling. "No offense. I just like things done right. It's hard when you don't have help." Help. In my house. I set the mug down gently, too gently, and called, "Mason, can you come down here?" He appeared on the stairs, hair sticking up, half asleep. "What's wrong?" Lila's smile switched on. "Nothing. Your mom's tense. I'm just trying to get us organized." "Organized?" I pointed at the refrigerator. "She threw away my food and taped rules to my fridge." Mason's eyes darted to the trash can, then back to me like a kid caught between parents. "Mom, it's just food." "It's not just food," I said. It's my home. Lila slid off the stool, folding her arms. We're building a life, Mason and I. It's kind of nice having someone around who can help us get settled. You're home all day, right? You've got time. I wasn't someone around. I was his mother. I was the owner. I was a woman who'd paid every mortgage payment, every repair bill, every property tax, even after my husband died. I took a breath and heard my own voice come out low and steady. You are not settling here. You're visiting, and you will treat me with respect. Lila's eyes sharpened. Respect goes both ways, Evelyn. Mason's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and winced. I'm late. I have to go. We'll talk later, okay? And just like that, he vanished upstairs, leaving me alone with her. Lila picked up my tablet. Try not to stress, she said, sweet as poison. At your age, that's dangerous. She walked away, and my kitchen felt smaller. I stared at those bold end no's on my refrigerator, and something inside me clicked into place. Quiet, solid, final. If Mason wouldn't draw a line, I would. And I wasn't waiting a couple weeks to find out what else she planned to take. I didn't raise my voice that morning. I didn't slam cabinets or cry into my chamomile. I made a list. First, document everything. Second, reassert control. Third, never let her see me flinch. By noon, 3 packages had arrived addressed to Lila Bennett at my house. Not care of, not temporary, just my street address, bold and permanent. One was a white storage cube shelf, the kind you assemble with an Allen key and misplaced confidence. Another was a faux marble desk. The third, absurdly, was a neon sign in cursive that read, "Good vibes only." She had it propped against my living room wall before I could say a word. That's not staying there, I told her. She didn't even turn around. It opens up the energy. It blocks my grandfather clock. That thing's creepy, she replied lightly. It sounds like it's counting down. It is, I said. It's called time. She laughed like I'd made a quaint joke. By 3 o'clock, she'd rearranged my bookshelves. My first editions were stacked horizontally for aesthetic. My cookbooks, some older than she was, were boxed up because no one needs that much saturated fat inspiration. I found the box in the hallway labeled Donate. I carried it back to the shelf and put every single book where it belonged. When Mason came home, she met him at the door like a triumphant realtor. Wait till you see the transformation. He walked into my living room and stopped. Oh, wow. Wow, I repeated. It's just brighter, Mom. It's my house, Mason. Lila looped her arm through his. We're just helping modernize. Evelyn deserves a refresh. I didn't ask for one. She tilted her head. Sometimes people don't know what they need. There it was again. That quiet, surgical condescension. I took Mason aside into the dining room, closing the pocket door halfway. She's receiving mail here. She's changing things. She threw out my food. He rubbed his face. Mom, she's just trying to make it feel like home. It's not her home. He hesitated. Just long enough. That pause told me more than any argument could. That evening, I cooked something elaborate on purpose. Coq au vin with pearl onions and a crusty baguette I'd bought from the French bakery downtown. I set the table with my wedding china. If she wanted to test my age, she could do it across linen napkins. Lila stared at the plate. Is that wine? Yes. We don't really drink during the week. You don't, I corrected gently. I do. Mason shifted uncomfortably. Mom. I sipped slowly and let the silence work. Halfway through dinner, Lila said casually. We were thinking. It might make sense for us to take the master bedroom. It has better light and it's closer to the bathroom. Stairs are hard on you. The audacity was so clean, so polished, it almost impressed me. My bedroom, I said evenly, is not up for discussion. She didn't back down. It's about practicality. It's about ownership. Mason cleared his throat. Maybe we can rotate? No, I said, not loudly, but firmly enough that even the grandfather clock seemed to pause. Lila's jaw tightened for the first time, a crack in the porcelain. Later that night, I walked past their room and heard her whispering, not softly enough. She's going to need help soon anyway. You don't want her alone. We could restructure things. If she signs something... I stopped breathing. Just temporary authority. To manage the property. It's safer. Safer for whom? Mason murmured something I couldn't hear. I went back to my room and locked the door for the first time in 32 years. At my vanity, I opened the small cedar box where I keep important documents, deed, insurance, Tom's will. I checked every page. Still there. Then I took my phone and began a dated log. Day 3. Mail received in her name. Furniture assembled without permission. Request to take master bedroom. Discussion overheard about signing something. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From clarity. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I dressed carefully, navy slacks, pressed blouse, the pearl earrings Mason gave me years ago. I drove to Nadine's office downtown, the one with the slightly crooked brass plaque and the smell of old paper and ambition. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "If she's receiving mail and staying more than a few nights, you need to be very careful. In Ohio, occupancy can turn into tenant rights faster than people realize." How fast? Fast enough. I stared at the manila folder she slid across the desk. Inside was a template. Notice to vacate. My name, my address. Blank line for hers. You can still avoid this, Nadine said quietly. But if you wait, it becomes harder. I thought about the neon sign glowing in my living room, about my butter in the trash, about my bedroom being discussed like a hospital room waiting for transfer. I won't wait, I said. When I got home, Lila was in my kitchen again, filming herself whisking something green in my copper bowl. Day 4 of our reset journey, she chirped to her phone. Living with family can be challenging, but we're creating boundaries. Boundaries. I walked past her without a word, sat at my dining table, and filled in the blank line. Lila Bennett. I signed my name slowly, carefully, like I was signing a check that would cost me something, but save me more. She turned, finally noticing the paper in my hand. "What's that?" she asked. I met her eyes. "It's your timeline." Lila didn't take the paper from my hand. She stared at it like it was a prank she hadn't agreed to. "Excuse me?" "It's a formal notice," I said calmly. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." Mason walked in halfway through that sentence, his gym bag still slung over his shoulder. "What's going on?" Lila's voice shifted instantly, softer, injured. "Your mom is kicking me out." "I'm not kicking you out," I corrected. "I'm protecting my home." Mason dropped the bag. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I am." Lila finally snatched the paper and scanned it. Her lips thinned when she saw the legal formatting. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise. "You talked to a lawyer," she said. "Yes." She laughed once, sharp. "You're unbelievable. We're family." "You are not," I replied evenly. That landed. Mason stepped closer to me. Why would you do this without even talking to us? We did talk, I said. About my bedroom, about signing something, about reorganizing my house like I'm already gone. His face paled slightly. That's not... I heard her. Silence thickened the air between us. Lila folded the notice neatly, too neatly. You can't just throw someone out. I receive mail here. I live here. You're a guest. Actually, she said, eyes sharpening again, if I've established residency, it's not that simple. There it was. Not panic, not apology, strategy. I felt a flicker of something cold settle behind my ribs. You've been here 4 days. That's enough to start a pattern, she replied smoothly. And if I contribute financially, you don't. She tilted her head. Not yet. Mason looked between us like a spectator at a tennis match he hadn't meant to attend. This is insane. Mom, she lost her apartment unexpectedly. We're trying to figure things out. And while you figure them out, I said, she installs furniture, throws out my food, and discusses authority over my property. That was taken out of context, Lila snapped, dropping the sweetness entirely. Oh? I asked quietly. She stepped forward. You're paranoid. Maybe that's the real issue here. There it was, the first swing below the belt. Mason flinched. Lila. No, she continued, voice rising. She's acting unstable. Serving legal notices over butter? Over decor? It's not about butter, I said, my voice still level. It's about respect. She looked at Mason. See? She's spiraling. I held his gaze instead. If she stays past 30 days without agreement, her status changes. That's the law. I won't let that happen. Mason's shoulders stiffened. You think she's trying to trap you? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure if she was trying to trap me. I was sure she wasn't leaving. That night, the house felt divided into territories. The kitchen light stayed on late upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding. At one point, my office door creaked. I waited 5 minutes before checking. Nothing looked disturbed, but the faint scent of her perfume lingered near my desk. The next morning, I went to the mailbox before sunrise. 3 more letters in her name. One was from a bank. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I took photos of every envelope. When I came back inside, she was already dressed, makeup perfect, hair sleek, sitting at my dining table with my laptop open. Password? She asked casually. I stopped in the doorway. That's not yours. Mason said you don't mind sharing. I mind. She closed it slowly, eyes locked on mine. You're making this harder than it has to be. I don't think you understand, I said quietly. You moved into the wrong house. For a split second, something flickered across her face. Not fear, calculation. Then she smiled again. You really want to do this the legal way? She asked. Yes. Okay, she said lightly. Let's do that. She stood, grabbed her phone, and walked past me. 10 minutes later, I heard her voice in the hallway. Yes, she was saying. Hi, I need to understand my tenant rights in Ohio. Tenant, not guest, not girlfriend. Tenant. I walked into my kitchen, poured myself coffee, and sat down at the table where my husband and I once planned vacations and argued about paint colors. Across from me now was a 30-day clock ticking loudly in my head, and something told me she wasn't planning to count down quietly. The house changed after that phone call. It wasn't louder. It was sharper. Lila stopped pretending to redecorate. Instead, she started positioning. 2 days after I served the notice, I found a small envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a handwritten note. Contributing $200 toward utilities. L. Underneath it sat cash. Crisp bills, deliberate. I didn't touch it. When Mason came home that evening, she made sure he saw it first. "I'm not freeloading," she said gently. "I want to help." Mason looked at me like he was waiting for approval. "I didn't ask for rent," I replied. "It's not rent," she said quickly. "It's shared responsibility." There it was again, language as camouflage. "If I accept that money," I said calmly, "it can be interpreted as tenancy." Mason frowned. "Mom, it's $200. It's precedent." Lila crossed her arms. "You're twisting everything into something sinister." "No," I answered. "I'm preventing it." She picked up the envelope and waved it slightly. "You'd rather struggle alone than let us contribute?" I almost laughed. Struggle? This house was paid off. My pantry was full. My life was steady. What she meant was control. That night, I overheard another conversation through the thin hallway walls. "She's isolating you," Lila murmured. "You know that, right? She doesn't want you building anything of your own." "That's not fair," Mason said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She's afraid of being alone." That part stung more than I expected. The next morning, I discovered something new. My office file drawer, the one with property documents, was slightly ajar. I never leave it that way. Inside, my deed was no longer on top. It had been flipped under other papers. Subtle, intentional. I walked straight upstairs and knocked on their door. Lila opened it halfway. "Yes?" "Stay out of my office." Her expression didn't change. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Good," I said. "Then it won't happen again." She stepped into the hallway fully now. "You're accusing me?" "I'm warning you." Mason appeared behind her. "Mom, this constant suspicion is exhausting." "So is being undermined in my own house." Lila sighed theatrically. "Maybe we should just formalize things." My stomach tightened. "Meaning?" "Draw up a simple occupancy agreement," she said smoothly. "So everyone feels secure." Secure. That word again. "You mean so you can claim legal standing," I replied. Her eyes flickered. "Just a fraction." "You're making me sound like a criminal." "I'm responding like a homeowner." Mason ran a hand through his hair. "There has to be a middle ground." "There is," I said. 30 days. Lila looked at him carefully, measuring something. Then she smiled. "Fine," she said. "We'll use the 30 days." Her tone wasn't surrender. It was promise. That afternoon, I stopped by Nadine's office again. "She offered money," I said, "and suggested an agreement." Nadine nodded slowly. "Do not accept payment. Do not sign anything. Keep logging everything. If she attempts to establish tenancy, we'll respond formally." "What if she tries something else?" "She will," Nadine said simply. When I returned home, I found Lila in my backyard, talking to my neighbor, Mr. Callahan, over the fence. "She's so generous letting us stay," Lila was saying brightly. "We're planning long-term renovations once things settle." Long-term. Renovations. I stepped outside. "Good afternoon, Frank." He looked confused. "Afternoon, Evelyn. Didn't know you were remodeling." "I'm not." Lila's smile tightened. That evening, I received a notification on my phone from my bank. Attempted login. Not by me. I changed my passwords immediately. Every account. Every device. When I walked back into the kitchen, Lila was slicing avocados at my counter like she'd always stood there. "Did you try accessing my bank account?" I asked quietly. She didn't look up. "Why would I do that?" "The login attempt came from inside this house." She paused, just long enough. "That's a serious accusation," she said. "Yes," I replied. "It is." Mason stepped in at the worst possible moment. "What now?" "She thinks I'm hacking her," Lila said, voice trembling slightly, convincing enough to sting. "I said there was an attempt," I corrected, "and I'm not naive." Mason looked at me like he didn't recognize me. "You've changed," he said. "No," I answered. "I've stopped being polite." Silence. Then Lila did something I didn't expect. She began to cry, not loudly, controlled, measured, strategic. "I feel unsafe here," she whispered. "Unsafe. In my house." Mason put his arm around her immediately. "Mom, this is getting out of hand." I looked at both of them and understood something with sudden clarity. She wasn't trying to out-argue me. She was trying to out-position me. If she could paint me unstable, controlling, volatile, then the eviction would look retaliatory. And if it looked retaliatory, it could complicate everything. That night, I installed 2 discrete cameras. One in the hallway near my office. One in the kitchen. I didn't tell them. I didn't need to. Because if she wanted to play legal chess, I was done playing checkers. The cameras caught something on the very first night. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Careful. At 11:43 p.m., Lila walked down the hallway barefoot, phone in hand. She paused outside my office, glanced toward the stairs, then tried the handle. Locked. She stood there for a moment, thinking. Then she crouched slightly, studying the lock as if memorizing it. The next morning, I said nothing. Instead, I made waffles. Real ones. With butter and powdered sugar and blueberries simmered with a splash of Grand Marnier, the kind of breakfast that reminds people whose house they're in. Lila didn't eat. "I don't do gluten," she said, sipping something green from a mason jar. Mason looked tired. "Mom, can we just reset?" "This tension is constant. It will end in 25 days, I replied calmly. Lila placed her jar down carefully. Or sooner. That was new. "How so?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Well, I spoke to someone yesterday. It's not so simple to remove someone who resides somewhere. You do not reside here. I sleep here. I receive mail here. I contribute here." "You attempted to contribute," I corrected. She leaned back in her chair. "You're isolating us emotionally. That can be considered harassment." Mason's head snapped toward her. "Harassment?" She shrugged slightly. "If someone creates a hostile environment, that matters." "Hostile?" I folded my napkin slowly. "You threw out my food. You tried to access my accounts. You're moving my belongings." She blinked, almost amused. "You can't prove that." I didn't answer, because now I could. That afternoon, something escalated. I went to my jewelry box to wear a small sapphire ring I'd inherited from my mother. It wasn't expensive, just sentimental. It wasn't there. I emptied the drawer, checked the bathroom, the bedside table. Nothing. My chest tightened, but I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't accuse. I went to the hallway camera feed. At 2:16 p.m., while I'd been in the garden trimming my hydrangeas, Lila entered my bedroom. She closed the door. She stayed inside for 8 minutes. When she came out, her hand brushed her sweater pocket. My pulse slowed instead of racing. Clarity, again. I walked upstairs. She was sitting on the bed, scrolling. Mason wasn't home. "I'm missing a ring," I said evenly. She looked up. "That's unfortunate." "You were in my room." She didn't deny it. "I was looking for extra towels." "In my jewelry drawer?" Her expression hardened. "Are you accusing me of stealing?" "Yes." The word landed clean between us. She stood abruptly. "You are out of your mind." I held her gaze. "Empty your pockets." She laughed in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Empty them." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she might refuse outright. Then she did something theatrical. She turned her pockets inside out. Nothing. She lifted her sweater slightly. "Satisfied?" I didn't move. Because I'd watched the footage carefully. Her right hand hadn't gone into her sweater pocket. It had slipped something into the small side compartment of her oversized tote bag. The bag currently sitting on my chair. I walked past her slowly and picked it up. "You can't just go through my things," she snapped. "Watch me." I unzipped the side compartment. The sapphire ring slid into my palm. Silence. Absolute. Her face didn't crumble. It recalibrated. "I found it on the floor," she said instantly. "I was going to return it." "You were leaving the house in 30 minutes, I replied. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Careful, Evelyn." There was no sweetness now, no performance. Just warning. You're digging yourself into something you won't enjoy. I felt something shift inside me then. Not fear, not anger, recognition. She wasn't embarrassed. She was testing limits. I walked past her without another word and went downstairs. When Mason came home, she was already crying. "She went through my bag," she said shakily. "She violated my privacy." He looked at me in disbelief. "Mom?" "I retrieved my property," I answered calmly, "from her possession." "She's lying," Lila whispered. "Check the cameras," I said. The room went still. Mason turned slowly toward me. "What cameras?" "In my house?" I replied. "The kind I'm allowed to install." Lila's composure cracked, just slightly. "You recorded me?" she demanded. "In shared spaces," I said. "And outside my locked bedroom door." Mason looked overwhelmed. "This is insane." "No," I said quietly. "This is documented." Sometimes the truth isn't loud, it's recorded. If someone took something precious from you and then cried victim, what would you do? Would you confront or stay quiet? Tell me below. Lila wiped her tears abruptly. They stopped too fast. "You're creating a hostile environment," she said again. "I feel unsafe." I looked at her. Really looked at her. "You should." Mason stared at me like he'd never heard that tone from me before, and for the first time since she'd stepped into my house. Lila didn't look in control. After the ring incident, the air in the house turned metallic. Lila stopped crying. That was the first real tell. People who are hurt cry in waves. Lila cried in tactics. For 2 days, she barely spoke to me. She stayed in their room, whispering to Mason, late into the night. I heard fragments through the vent: toxic, unstable, control issues, emotional abuse. Words carefully chosen like ingredients in a recipe designed to curdle. On the third evening, I came home from the grocery store. Fresh rosemary, heirloom tomatoes, a small wedge of manchego, and saw cars lining the curb. 3 of them. Music drifted from inside my house, not loud enough to alert neighbors, just bold enough to claim territory. I stepped through my front door and found 6 strangers in my living room. Wine glasses in hand, shoes on my Persian rug. Lila stood near the fireplace, radiant in a silk blouse I'd never seen before. "Oh," she said, surprised in the way actors are surprised. "You're back early." "This is my home," I replied. "There is no early." One of the guests gave me a polite smile. "Hi, you must be Mason's mom." "I must." Lila stepped closer, lowering her voice. "It's just a small gathering. Networking. Don't make it awkward. You invited people into my house without asking." She leaned in, perfume sharp. "You're creating tension again." I turned to the group. "This evening is over." The room went still. Mason rushed in from the kitchen. "Mom, come on, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked calmly. "Ask for respect?" Lila placed a hand dramatically over her chest. "We're adults. We're allowed to have guests." "Not here." A man near the couch muttered, "Maybe we should go." "Yes," I said. They began gathering their coats. Lila's jaw tightened, but she kept smiling until the door shut behind the last guest. Then she dropped the expression entirely. "You embarrassed me," she said flatly. "You embarrassed yourself." Mason exhaled heavily. "Mom, this isn't sustainable." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." Lila crossed her arms. "You can't dictate everything. If I live here, I have rights." "You do not live here." She stepped closer, eyes cold now. "Prove it." That night, something else happened. At 2:03 a.m., my bedroom doorknob rattled. Not gently, firmly. I sat upright in bed, heart steady, not racing. The handle turned again, locked. A pause. Then silence. The next morning, Mason avoided eye contact. Lila looked perfectly composed. I didn't mention it. Instead, I went to Nadine. "She hosted guests," I said, "and tried my bedroom door." Nadine's mouth thinned. "She's escalating to provoke a reaction. Don't give her one." "What's the next step?" "If she interferes with your access to the home or attempts intimidation, we document and respond formally. If she pushes far enough, we involve law enforcement." When I returned, something in my kitchen was different. My knife block was gone. In its place sat a sleek magnetic strip mounted to the backsplash. My knives, my late husband's gift from our trip to Florence, were displayed like showroom pieces. "You drilled into my tile," I said quietly. "It's temporary," Lila replied, sipping tea. "Take it down." "No." The word was simple. Mason looked between us. "It's not a big deal." "It is," I said. "Because she didn't ask." Lila stood slowly. "You treat me like an intruder." "You are." Her expression shifted again. This time, not to tears, not to sweetness, to something sharper. "You're alone," she said quietly. "That's the real issue. You don't want him building a life outside of you." Mason flinched. I didn't. "I want him building a life," I said. "Just not on my spine." Silence. Then Lila did something unexpected. She walked to the hallway camera and waved. A slow, deliberate gesture. "I hope you're getting a good angle," she said. Then she smiled at me. That night, I reviewed the footage again and saw something I'd missed before. At 1:14 a.m. 2 nights ago, she hadn't just stood outside my office. She'd taken a photo of the door, of the lock, zoomed in. She wasn't improvising, she was planning. And suddenly, the 30-day clock didn't feel like a countdown. It felt like a fuse. I didn't wait for the fuse to burn. On the 8th morning, I drove to the courthouse before it opened. The building smelled like paper, dust, and quiet authority. I filed a formal copy of the notice to vacate. Dated, documented, stamped. No room for she said, just ink and procedure. When I returned home, Lila was in the kitchen again, humming softly, while rearranging my spice rack into alphabetical order. Paprika next to parsley. Cumin displaced like a minor exile. "You moved my cloves," I said. She didn't turn. "Organization reduces anxiety. I'm not anxious." "You should be," she replied under her breath. I stepped closer. "Your notice has been formally filed." That made her turn. Her expression didn't crack. It sharpened. "You escalated." "No," I said evenly. "I formalized." Mason came down the stairs mid-conversation. "What now?" "I filed documentation," I told him. "Standard procedure." He stared at me like I'd betrayed something sacred. "You're treating her like a criminal." "She stole from me." "I put it back," Lila snapped. "You hid it." Her voice rose. "You invaded my privacy." "It was my property." Mason pressed his palms to his temples. "Stop. Both of you." Lila's breathing quickened. Not from fear, from calculation. "Maybe," she said slowly, "we need outside perspective." "What does that mean?" I asked. She pulled out her phone. "I don't feel safe here," she said loudly, clearly, and then she dialed. My stomach didn't drop. It steadied. Because this was the move I'd been waiting for. She stepped into the living room, voice trembling, convincing, practiced. "Yes, I'd like to report emotional harassment and surveillance in my residence." Residence. Mason's face drained of color. "Lila, I'm scared," she whispered dramatically. I walked to the hallway camera, adjusted it slightly, not hiding it, not flaunting it, just ensuring visibility. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up. Blue lights didn't flash, but the presence was enough. 2 officers stepped inside, calm, neutral. "What seems to be the issue?" one asked. Lila stepped forward first, tears ready, voice fragile. "She installed cameras everywhere. She goes through my things. She's trying to illegally evict me." The officer looked at me. "Ma'am?" "I am the homeowner," I said calmly. "She was served a formal 30-day notice. Cameras are in shared spaces and outside my private office. No bedrooms. No bathrooms." "Is that accurate?" he asked Lila. "She's creating a hostile environment," Lila insisted. "I contribute here." "Financially?" the officer asked. "She tried," I answered. Mason stood frozen between us. The second officer turned to him. "Sir, do you pay rent here?" "No," Mason said quietly. "Does she?" He hesitated. That hesitation lasted 2 seconds too long. "No." The officer nodded slowly. "Ma'am," he said to Lila, "without a lease or established tenancy agreement, this is a civil matter. If you've been served notice, the appropriate channel is court." Her composure slipped for the first time. "So she can just throw me out?" she demanded. "She can ask you to leave," he corrected. "I live here." "For how long?" he asked. She paused. "A little over a week." The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Then he turned to me. "Ma'am, as long as you're not restricting access unlawfully or threatening, you're within your rights." "I'm not," I replied. He looked back at Lila. "We recommend resolving this peacefully." Peacefully. After they left, the silence in the house was heavy. Mason looked at Lila like he was seeing her from a new angle. "You said you felt unsafe," he said quietly. "I do," she snapped. "She's manipulative." "I recorded facts," I replied. Lila turned toward me, voice low now, stripped of theatrics. "You think this is over?" "I think," I said evenly, "you miscalculated." Her eyes darkened. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I stepped closer, close enough to see the tension under her jaw. Neither do you. That night, Mason didn't sit next to her on the couch. He sat alone. And for the first time since she walked into my house, the balance shifted. The morning after the police visit, the house felt staged, too quiet, too controlled. Lila didn't emerge until almost 10. When she did, she looked composed, hair smooth, makeup flawless, expression neutral, not wounded, not shaken, strategic. Mason was already at the table, staring into his coffee like it might give him answers. I spoke to someone else, Lila said casually, opening the fridge. There are protections against retaliatory eviction. I buttered my toast slowly. You weren't evicted. You were given notice. You installed surveillance and filed paperwork after a disagreement, she replied. That can be interpreted. By whom? I asked. She smiled faintly. By people who listen. Mason finally looked up. Lila, can we just stop escalating? I'm not escalating, she said softly. I'm protecting myself. From what? From butter? From accountability? I didn't say it. Instead, I stood, rinsed my plate, and walked toward my office. Halfway down the hall, I noticed something new, a thin envelope taped to my door. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a printed screenshot, a social media post, a blurred photo of my living room, captioned, "When older relatives refuse to let you grow and weaponize legal threats. Hashtag toxic homes, hashtag emotional abuse." My stomach didn't twist. It cooled. She was building narrative. I walked back into the kitchen and placed the paper on the table. You're posting about my home? She glanced at it briefly. Freedom of speech. That's an interior photo. So? You took it without consent. She shrugged. It's my residence. Mason's voice was strained. Lila. What? She snapped. She's trying to ruin my stability. I'm allowed to talk about it. You are not allowed, I said calmly, to photograph and publish my private property to frame me as abusive. Her eyes narrowed. Careful with that word. Why? I asked. Does it make you uncomfortable? She stood abruptly. You're threatening me again. I'm documenting. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think your little cameras make you powerful? No, I said quietly. They make you visible. That afternoon, something else happened. A locksmith's van pulled into my driveway. I was in the garden when I saw it. Lila walked out to meet him. I moved faster than I had in years. What are you doing? I demanded. She didn't flinch. Upgrading security. For whom? For the residents. I turned to the locksmith. I am the homeowner. No work is authorized. He looked uncomfortable immediately. Ma'am, I was told. You were misinformed. Lila crossed her arms. You're refusing to make the house safe. It is safe. For you. The locksmith stepped back. I don't want to be involved in a dispute. Wise choice, I said. He left. Lila's mask slipped again. You can't stop everything, she said quietly. I can stop what's mine. That evening, Mason approached me alone. She says you're trying to push her into homelessness, he said. She has options, I replied. Friends? Family? Resources. She says you're targeting her. I looked at him carefully. Do you believe that? He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than the accusation. I believe, I continued gently, that she tried to take control of something that isn't hers, and now she's upset she can't. He ran a hand over his face. I don't recognize this situation anymore. I do, I said softly. Upstairs, I heard Lila on the phone again. Yes, she was saying. She's intimidating. She monitors me. I'm afraid she might lock me out. I walked to the hallway camera feed. At 3:17 p.m. earlier that day, she had stood directly under the lens and mouthed something silently. I rewound, zoomed in. 3 words. Watch me win. My pulse didn't spike. It steadied. Because this wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about timing. And she was forgetting something crucial. The more she performed, the more evidence she created. 2 days later, the mail stopped coming in Lila's name. That alone told me something. She wasn't strengthening her claim anymore. She was pivoting. The shift came quietly. I walked into the kitchen mid-morning and found the refrigerator half empty. My containers of lentil soup, the manchego wedge, even my jar of capers, gone. Where's my food? I asked. Lila didn't look up from the couch. I reorganized. Into what? She sighed like I was exhausting. You have control issues around minor things. I asked a question. It's in storage. What storage? She gestured vaguely toward the basement. I went down. Half my pantry sat in cardboard boxes labeled shared. Shared. I carried one box back upstairs and set it firmly on the table. This stops, I said. Mason looked up from his phone. It's just food, Mom. It's pattern, I corrected. Lila stood slowly. You're obsessed. With ownership? I asked calmly. Yes. She stepped closer, voice low. You don't want witnesses. To what? To how you behave. That sentence hung in the air. It was no longer about space. It was narrative positioning again. That afternoon, something new happened. A certified letter arrived, addressed to me. I signed for it. Inside was a typed notice. Formal complaint of harassment and unlawful surveillance. Filed, apparently, through a tenant advocacy group. I read it twice. Then I smiled. Because she'd made a mistake. The date on the complaint referenced an incident that hadn't happened yet. She'd pre-written it. I walked upstairs without knocking. She was on the bed, scrolling. You're rushing, I said. She blinked slowly. What? You filed something dated for tomorrow. Her face went still. I placed the letter on the bed between us. For a split second, just a fraction. She looked caught. Then she recovered. Clerical error, she said smoothly. No, I replied. Timeline error. Mason appeared in the doorway again, drawn like gravity to conflict. What now? She's trying to legally corner me, Lila said before I could speak. She wants to intimidate me with technicalities. It's not a technicality, I said. It's fabrication. Mason looked at the paper, confusion deepening. Why would you predate something? He asked her quietly. It's standard formatting, she snapped. It's sloppy, I said. That word landed harder than I expected. Sloppy. She stood abruptly. You think you're smarter than everyone. No, I said. Just patient. Her voice sharpened. You installed cameras. You filed notices. You're documenting like I'm a criminal. Only because you behave like someone building a case. Silence. Then she did something reckless. You want proof? She said. She grabbed her phone and hit record. Everyone, she began dramatically, angling the camera toward her face. I need help. I'm living in a hostile environment with someone who's trying to force me out illegally. Turn that off, Mason said sharply. She's documenting me, Lila shot back. I'm documenting her. "You're in my house," I said calmly. "Recording without consent." She pivoted the phone toward me. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing." "Then smile." I didn't. She lowered the phone slowly. "You're not scared," she said quietly. "No." "Why?" "Because you keep miscalculating." Her jaw tightened. "You think you've already won. I think you're running out of angles." For the first time, there was no immediate retort, no performance, just silence. That evening, Mason knocked on my bedroom door. Alone. "Did she really try to access your bank account?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "And the ring?" "Yes." He leaned against the doorframe, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I don't know what's real anymore." I softened, just slightly. Reality is what holds up under documentation. He exhaled slowly. Downstairs, I heard a drawer slam, then another, then footsteps pacing. She was losing control of the script. And when someone like Lila starts losing narrative control, they don't retreat. They escalate. It happened on a Tuesday. Quiet afternoon. Gray sky. The kind of day where nothing dramatic should occur. I was in the kitchen slicing fennel for a salad when I heard the front door open and slam. Voices. Not just Lila's. Two unfamiliar ones. I stepped into the hallway and saw them immediately. Two uniformed officers. Again. But this time, their posture was different. More formal. "Ma'am," one of them said, addressing me directly. "We received a call about threats and unlawful entry into a private room." I looked at Lila. Her expression was perfectly arranged. "She tried to force her way into my bedroom," Lila said softly. "She's been escalating. I'm scared she'll lock me out or harm my belongings." I didn't blink. "Harm?" I repeated evenly. Mason stood behind her, pale. "Lila said you tried the door last night." I felt something cold and precise settle into place. "Which door?" I asked. "Mine," Lila answered quickly. "At 2 a.m. The officer turned to me. "Ma'am?" "At 2 a.m, I said calmly. I was asleep, in my locked bedroom. "She's lying," Lila whispered. The officer looked at me carefully. "Do you have cameras installed in the hallway?" "Yes." "May we see the footage?" Lila's jaw tightened almost invisibly. I nodded. "Of course." We walked together to the small monitor near my office. I rewound to 2 a.m. The footage showed the hallway. Still. Empty. At 2:03 a.m., Lila's door opened. She stepped out. Looked toward my door. Then, she walked to it and rattled the handle. Firmly. Twice. Then returned to her room. Silence filled the hallway recording. The officer paused the video. "Is that you?" he asked her. She didn't answer immediately. "That's not the full context," she said. The officer rewound again, clear as glass. She had created the incident. Mason stared at the screen like something inside him had cracked. "You said she did that," he whispered. Lila's composure fractured. "She's manipulating the footage," she snapped. The officer glanced at me. "Is this system date-stamped?" "Yes." He pointed to the corner of the screen. The timestamp glowed clearly. Lila's breathing quickened. Not performance this time. Real. "You're spying on me," she said suddenly, voice rising. "In common areas," the officer corrected. "Which is lawful." She turned to Mason desperately. "You're going to let her humiliate me like this?" Mason didn't answer. He kept staring at the footage. The officer faced Lila again. "Ma'am, filing false reports can have consequences." Her shoulders stiffened. I didn't file anything false, she insisted. You alleged a threat. We see no evidence of that. Silence. Then she tried one more pivot. She's been psychologically intimidating me. With what? The officer asked calmly. She looked around the hallway like the walls might answer. With eviction papers, surveillance, emotional pressure. The officer's tone cooled slightly. Being asked to leave a private residence through legal notice is not intimidation. The words landed heavily. After they left, the house felt hollow. Mason turned slowly toward her. Why would you say she tried your door? He asked. I felt threatened, she said weakly. That wasn't what you told me. She looked at him like he was betraying her. I needed you to understand how serious this is. I did, he replied quietly. I just didn't think you'd make something up. She stepped back like he'd struck her. You're choosing her. I'm choosing facts, he said. The room went still. Sometimes the truth doesn't shout. It stands quietly while lies unravel. If someone you trusted twisted reality like that, would you forgive them or walk away? I'm curious what you'd do. Lila's eyes shifted toward me then, not furious, not dramatic. Cold. You think this is over? She said quietly. No, I answered. I think you're cornered. Her lips pressed thin, and when someone like her feels cornered, they don't surrender, they strike. Cornered people get desperate. Desperate people get careless. The morning after the second police visit, Lila didn't come downstairs at all. Mason left for work without saying much, just a quiet, "See you later," that felt heavier than it should have. By noon, I heard drawers opening upstairs. Then my office door. The handle didn't rattle this time. It clicked, unlocked. My breath didn't spike. It sharpened. I walked down the hallway slowly. The door to my office stood slightly ajar. Inside, Lila was at my desk. My cedar document box was open. She froze when she saw me. For a split second, neither of us spoke. What are you doing? I asked quietly. She didn't flinch. I needed clarity, she said. On what? On whether you're financially stable enough to make decisions like this. I stepped into the room fully. You broke into my office. You left it vulnerable. I locked it. She held up a small silver object between her fingers. A duplicate key. My pulse stayed even. Where did you get that? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. You'd be surprised how easy things are to copy. I stared at her. Not shocked, not outraged, just cataloging. You made a copy of my office key. For transparency, she said smoothly. For leverage, I corrected. She placed the key on my desk deliberately. You think you're untouchable because you're older, because this house is yours. But paperwork can shift. Authority can shift. Not without my signature, I said calmly. Her eyes flicked toward the deed on the desk. That's the thing, she replied softly. People sign things when they're under pressure. I stepped closer. Are you threatening me? She smiled faintly. I'm saying circumstances change. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lunge for the key. Instead, I reached for my phone. What are you doing? She asked. Calling my attorney. That shifted something in her posture. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm escalating appropriately. She stepped toward the door as I dialed Nadine. Yes, I said calmly into the phone. She duplicated a private key and accessed restricted documents. Silence while Nadine spoke. Yes, I replied. I have it recorded. Lila's composure faltered. You recorded inside a private room, she demanded. No, I said, ending the call. But I recorded you entering it. The rest is physical evidence. Her breathing quickened slightly. You can't prove I copied it. I picked up the duplicate key. It doesn't match any of mine. She didn't answer. That afternoon, I drove to the courthouse again. This time, not just to document, but to file a report. Unauthorized duplication of property access. Attempted document interference. When I returned home, Mason was waiting in the kitchen. She told me you're trying to ruin her life, he said quietly. She's trying to entangle mine, I replied. He ran a hand through his hair. Did she really copy your key? Yes. He stared at the table. She said she found it. In my locked office? Silence. Upstairs, a door slammed, then footsteps, then the sound of something heavy hitting the wall. I didn't react, because the sound wasn't rage, it was unraveling. And unraveling, people make mistakes. That night, I reviewed the footage again. At 9:14 a.m., the hallway camera showed her holding something small and metallic before entering my office. Clear enough, not blurry, not ambiguous, deliberate. I saved the clip, backed it up, printed still frames, and placed them in a folder labeled simply Pattern. Upstairs, I heard her pacing again, her voice low, sharp. I'm not leaving, she hissed into her phone. Not without something. That sentence settled deep. Not without something. Not peace. Not resolution. Something. And that meant one final move was coming. The kind that wasn't subtle. The kind that wasn't strategic. The kind born from losing control. I turned off the hallway light and locked my bedroom door. This time, not out of fear, but readiness. The final move didn't come at night. It came in broad daylight. Calculated. Visible. Irreversible. I returned from Nadine's office just after noon and immediately felt it. Stillness, not tension. Absence. The living room looked untouched. Too untouched. My Persian rug was gone, not folded, not rolled. Gone. So was the antique side table by the window. The one Tom refinished the year before he died. I stood in the center of the room and let my breathing settle. This wasn't impulse damage. This was relocation. I walked to the driveway. A rental truck sat parked along the curb. Half full. My rug was inside. My table. 2 of my dining chairs. I stepped toward the truck just as Lila appeared from the side yard. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked resolved. What are you doing? I asked quietly. Preparing for transition, she replied. That furniture is not yours. She crossed her arms. It's part of the shared living environment. No, I said. It's mine. You created a hostile environment, she said calmly. I'm securing assets. Assets. I almost admired the audacity. Mason came out from the garage, face pale. Lila, stop. She's forcing us out, Lila snapped. We need stability. You're stealing, I said plainly. Prove it. I pulled out my phone. She smiled. You think that solves everything? No, I replied. But it clarifies. I began recording. This is my property being removed without permission, I stated clearly. Lila stepped forward and grabbed the edge of the rug. I contributed, she insisted. Emotionally, physically. This house benefited from me. Benefit does not equal ownership. Mason looked shattered. This isn't what we talked about, he whispered to her. We talked about security, she shot back. By stealing from my mother? Her composure cracked for real this time. I am not leaving empty-handed. There it was. No more narrative. No more strategy. Just motive. I stepped closer to the truck and photographed the license plate, the rental logo, the interior contents. You move one more item, I said calmly, and I call the police for theft. You already weaponized them, she snapped. No, I replied. You did. Mason moved toward the truck. Put it back, he said quietly. Lila looked at him like she didn't recognize him anymore. You're choosing her again. I'm choosing reality. For a moment, I thought she might escalate physically. Instead, she did something colder. She pulled out her phone. Fine, she said. We settle this in court. I prefer it, I answered. Her jaw tightened. You think you have evidence? I have footage, reports, documentation, witnesses. She laughed once, brittle. You think judges care about old women and hurt feelings? I think they care about property law. Silence. The standoff stretched between us. Then, slowly, Mason climbed into the truck. He began lifting my rug out. Lila stood frozen, watching, calculating, but this time, she had no angle left, no misdirection, no narrative to pivot into, because the story had narrowed to something simple: ownership, proof, and motive. When the last piece of furniture was returned inside, she looked smaller somehow, not physically, strategically, but her eyes still burned with something unfinished. This isn't over, she said quietly. I met her gaze. I know. Because court wasn't the end. Court was exposure. And exposure is what people like her fear most. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, and she had 7 days left in my house. 7 days to either leave quietly or attempt one final strike. Courtrooms are quieter than people expect. No dramatic music, no gasps, just fluorescent lighting and paper sliding across polished wood. The hearing lasted 17 minutes. 17. Lila sat beside Mason, posture composed, chin slightly lifted like this was a misunderstanding she'd soon correct. I sat alone at the opposite table with Nadine, my folder labeled pattern resting in front of me. When the judge asked for the timeline, I didn't embellish. I listed dates, mail received, notice served, police visits, unauthorized key duplication, attempted removal of property. Each statement backed by printed stills, timestamps, certified copies. No emotion, just sequence. Lila's attorney, young, confident, attempted to frame it differently. Ms. Bennett contributed to the household, he said. She established residency. For 11 days? Nadine asked calmly. The judge raised an eyebrow. Lila was asked directly, did you remove furniture belonging to the homeowner without written permission? She hesitated. Temporarily, she replied. For what purpose? To protect shared assets. The judge paused. Were those assets purchased by you? Silence. No, she admitted. The judge's pen scratched lightly against paper. Then came the question that mattered. Did you duplicate a key to a locked private office without consent? Lila's composure flickered. It was accessible. That wasn't the question. She swallowed. Yes. The word fell flat. The judge leaned back slightly. This court finds no established tenancy. The notice to vacate stands. The respondent is to remove herself and her personal belongings from the property within 72 hours. Any interference with the homeowner's property will result in further legal action. 17 minutes. And just like that, the narrative ended. Outside the courthouse, Lila didn't look at me. She looked at Mason, You let this happen, she said quietly. I didn't, he replied. You did. She searched his face for something. Support, alignment, denial. She didn't find it. Back at the house, the air felt different. Not lighter, resolved. She moved through the rooms methodically, packing clothes, cosmetics, the beige decorative stems she'd insisted made everything modern. I watched from the kitchen table, not to intimidate, but to witness. At one point, she paused near the hallway camera. She looked up at it, then at me. You enjoyed this, she said. No, I replied. I endured it. Her mouth tightened. You think you protected something. I did. Loneliness? She asked sharply. I held her gaze. Boundaries. Silence. Mason carried her last suitcase to the car without speaking. When she reached the front door, she stopped, turned. For a moment, I saw something raw there, not manipulation, not strategy. Fear of losing control. You'll regret pushing me, she said quietly. No, I answered. I'll regret letting you stay. She studied me one last time. Then she walked out. The door closed. No slam. No theatrics. Just finality. Mason stood in the entryway long after the car pulled away. I didn't see it, he said eventually. I know, I replied. I thought you were overreacting. I know. He looked at the living room, the rug back in place, the grandfather clock steady, the neon sign long gone. I feel stupid. Good, I said gently. That means you're learning. Upstairs, the room she'd occupied felt hollow. The air smelled faintly of her perfume and something unsettled. But the house itself, it felt like mine again. Still, something lingered. Not tension, not threat. Consequence. Because removal is not repair, and trust doesn't reassemble as quickly as furniture. The 72 hours were up. She was gone. But the aftermath was just beginning. The house was quiet the first night after she left. Not peaceful, quiet like a room after an argument, when the words are gone, but the air still remembers. Mason didn't leave. That surprised me. He sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, staring at nothing. I'd made something simple. Tomato soup with fresh basil and thick slices of sourdough. He barely touched it. She's not answering my messages, he said eventually. That's probably intentional, I replied. He nodded slowly. I defended her, he added, almost to himself. Yes. I told you that you'd changed. I folded my napkin carefully. I had. He looked up at me then, confused. I stopped accommodating disrespect, I clarified. Silence stretched between us. Not hostile, just honest. The next morning, I went upstairs to reclaim the room she'd used. I opened the windows wide despite the cold, stripped the bed, vacuumed every corner. In the closet, I found something she'd left behind, not by accident. A folder. Inside were printed screenshots of property value estimates for my home. Notes scribbled in the margins. Equity leverage? Joint claim if cohabitation extends? My stomach didn't twist. It confirmed. She hadn't been improvising. She'd been calculating. I brought the folder downstairs and placed it on the table in front of Mason. He read silently. His face changed. Not anger, not disbelief. Recognition. She was planning something, he whispered. Yes. He sank into the chair slowly. I thought she was just ambitious. She was, I said. Just not about the right things. He covered his face with his hands. I almost signed something she drafted. he admitted quietly. She said it was just for shared budgeting. I didn't even read it properly. I didn't react outwardly. Inside, something tightened. Did you sign? I asked carefully. No. A breath I didn't know I was holding finally left me. He looked at me then, not as an opponent, not as an obstacle, as his mother. I'm sorry, he said. The words weren't dramatic. They were tired. I should have listened. You should have observed, I corrected gently. Listening is easy. Seeing is harder. He nodded. I feel like I let someone into your house who saw it as opportunity. You did, I said calmly. And now you understand the difference between love and leverage. He absorbed that quietly. Later that afternoon, I replaced the spice rack the way I liked it, returned the knives to their wooden block, put my radio back on the counter. Small restorations, but meaningful. That evening, Mason stood in the doorway of my bedroom. Are we okay? He asked. We will be, I replied. He hesitated. Do you think I was stupid? No, I said. You were hopeful. He gave a faint, humorless smile. I won't make that mistake again. I didn't answer that. Because mistakes aren't avoided through promises. They're avoided through memory. That night, I sat in the living room with a cup of chamomile and looked around. The grandfather clock ticked steadily. The Persian rug lay flat and centered. No neon glow, no whispered strategy behind doors, just quiet ownership. But ownership doesn't erase what happened. It defines what you tolerate next. Upstairs, Mason was packing a suitcase. Not because I asked him to, because he needed space. And for the first time since this began, the house felt like it was breathing again. Mason left 3 days later, not dramatically, not angrily. He packed 2 suitcases and stood by the front door like a man who'd finally understood something he should have noticed months ago. I need to reset, he said quietly. I know. He hesitated. I'm not going back to her. That's your decision, I replied. It's the right one. I didn't argue, because growth isn't proven by declarations, it's proven by distance. When the door closed behind him, the house settled into a silence that wasn't tense this time, just honest. I walked through each room slowly, touching the back of chairs, straightening picture frames, adjusting the lace runner on the dining table. Small gestures. Ownership reaffirmed. In the spare room closet, I found one last trace of her, a sticky note. Folded. 3 words written sharply. You'll be alone. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I smiled. Alone was never the threat. Being used was. I walked downstairs and brewed coffee the way I liked it. Strong, unapologetic, real cream. I turned on my old radio. The one she said felt dated. The music filled the kitchen gently, without asking permission. By afternoon, I received a final notification. The rental truck company had confirmed return of the vehicle. No reported damages. The legal file was closed. No appeals filed. No new complaints. It was done. That evening, I sat in my living room with a bowl of pistachios and a book I'd been meaning to finish. The grandfather clock ticked. The house felt steady, not victorious, steady, because this was never about defeating her. It was about refusing to surrender. Love does not require surrender. Motherhood does not require silence. Age does not require submission. At 67, I didn't need validation. I needed boundaries, and I kept them. Sometimes standing your ground costs you comfort, even relationships. I'm not sure everyone would have handled it the same way, but protecting your home and your dignity matters. If this story meant something to you, like subscribe and tell me in the comments. Would you have done what Evelyn did or chosen differently?